Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Stories That Inspire Us. My name is Janice Malillo, your host, and of course, I have an amazing guest on today. And just to let everyone know, we are also simulcasting live through the Wisdom Audio app. Today, I want to take this opportunity to showcase an amazing guest, as every guest that has come on. Rose is successful. She is beautiful. She is a mom. She is a grandmother who doesn't even look old enough to be a grandmother. But there's always a story behind the story. And let's get this conversation going. I am so excited to welcome to the Stories podcast, Rose Gonzales. Welcome. So excited you're here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to share our story and, hopefully just kind of help people if they're stuck with certain places in life and let them know that if we can do it, so can you.
You hit the nail on the head with that one. So many times I think we don't look at things that happen in our lives, and a lot of times they are traumatic events. And of course, when we are in the midst of something very emotional, very, very tragic, we don't see the blessings along the way. And what a way to share your journey, your mission, than really honoring yourself and your family by sharing that story to inspire others. So thank you so much for sharing that. Rose, as I mentioned, you are a very busy mom, grandma, successful entrepreneur, very busy, and in the top 3%, because you are an amazing real estate agent.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely takes a lot of, time management skills to really balance, what we're doing today. But we're very fortunate enough to have the lifestyle that we have. But, I can share that, it was never a perfect story. It still isn't. But, it's definitely something that everyone can work towards. Being a mom of 4 and a grandmother. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, you're a grandma, that's crazy. We actually started very early. I met my husband when I was 12 years old, going on 13. So we were he was the new kid in 8th grade. And, he has his own stories of, how he got to where we are, to where we met. But we were teenage parents. I got pregnant at the age of 14. And, we have just gone through so much together as a couple and as a family. And, the thing that you were talking about where everybody has a story and, when you're in the midst of what was happening, you can't really connect the dots and you are thinking, why is this happening to me? And one of the things that we always talk about when we share our story is how we ended up meeting each other, because it's very to that point. When I was in 5th grade, I was actually jumped by a number of kids. It was very unfortunate. And, it was a horrifying experience, a very scary, very traumatic, being that age and not knowing why it was happening to you. And for a very long time, every time I walked onto a school campus, I would always have my head down because I didn't have that confidence and I was always scared of what people thought. And so after school, a bunch of kids, walked me to a nearby park. There was probably about 20 kids that were involved and a whole bunch of them watching. And it went on for hours. I mean, it was terrifying. And so, at that time, it was like, man, I just was very unlucky. Like, why is this happening to me? And I couldn't really figure it out. And then, I moved to a different city where my mom was working, which was just a couple cities down from where we lived. And I finished school, in the grade school in that area. And then I went to middle school. And so my husband shares his story. He actually was going from school to school. He moved from Newark to San Ramon, and he also got jumped in I think it was Pleasanton. And so it was ironic because we met in junior high. So I had my situation in a city called Union City. Then I moved to Newark. And then he was in, I think, Pleasanton and moved to Newark. And so we met each other at Newark Junior High School. And so we always tell people, like, yes, it's a terrible story. And we couldn't figure out looking forward, like, why that was happening. But now that we look back, it was like, it was a tragedy, but we wouldn't have met if that didn't happen to us. I would have been a completely different school district.
And I just want to touch upon something that you said there, which I think is so important to your story. Why was that happening? Because a lot of times, especially when you are a young, impressionable middle schooler, and now you're in a different environment, we do ask that question: why is this happening? Because that's a normal reaction. When you look back at that, and when you say that, and when your husband and yourself talk about that, what do you think is one other thing that stands out in your mind? Because you also said you would have never met your husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think everything happens for a reason. I'm a really big believer in that. And, you always have to have a lesson to learn. It's not, we go through a lot in life. And if you don't take the time to figure out what the lesson was or what you're being taught at that time, like we didn't really realize that that was a lesson that we were being taught at that time until we were older and more working towards personal development and just being a little bit more spiritual. So I think, that time we were just, just confused children. We didn't know what was happening. And it did take a toll on who I was growing up. I mean, having a kid at 14 or, getting pregnant at 14, obviously I went through some emotional battles. But, I think I just feel like I wouldn't change how things happened. It was a lesson in my life to, just kind of be humble and know that things are going to happen to you and you're just going to have to fight through what it is that you're going through and learn from it.
Wow. So very young age to have a baby.
We didn't even drive.
And of course, I'm thinking of you at that very young age, and now you're going to be a mom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was that, I have to assume to some point, that was very shocking for you?
It was, but for some reason, I felt like I was ready for it. I don't know if it was just kind of like something that I just always had was a maternal instinct, but it was actually like a kind of weird story also. So like, my husband and I, we were young, we were just we got very, obsessed, I guess, with each other to where we were constantly having to be together. And I was doing certain things that my mom didn't like. So I was not attending school and just going to see him because he had moved away from where I was. So he moved back to San Ramon. And so my mom actually put me on a one-way ticket to the Philippines.
Wow.
And, yes. And so, it was one of those where I was leaving him for good. And I have no idea what was happening to my life. I'm going back to the Philippines. And so being in the Philippines, I just kind of went with the flow, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And thankfully, I was with my dad and my cousins. And so, I was with relatives, just really trying to figure out what was happening in my life. And maybe like a month into it, I was getting sick. And I kind of had a hunch that something was up. And I was really scared because, in the Philippines, they're very strict out there and they look down on people who, there was even people talking about me because I had dark lipstick on. It was just a very, very different culture. And so I was a little bit scared about that, knowing that maybe I was pregnant and I was in a foreign country. And so I told my mom, and so she had my uncle take me to the doctors, and sure enough, I was pregnant. And at that time, my husband and I weren't really talking. And I knew that it was expensive to call him, and I had no idea how I was going to tell him. So back in the day, we used to have 1-800 collect call. And I actually did one of those. And I was like, what, you have a 1-800 collect call from, I'm pregnant. And I just hung up. And so that's how he found out that we were pregnant.
Oh my God. I want to laugh to a certain extent. I gotta tell you. But that's very creative.
I mean, I didn't know what to expect because we weren't together anymore. We were young. I didn't know how he was going to react. And so I was terrified to tell him. And, we were all the way across the world from each other. And so he actually ended up calling me back, and boy, we racked up our phone bills, both sides of the family. And we just talked and talked and talked. And then I think I was about 4 months pregnant when I came back. So I was gone for 4 months. I came back with this little pouch belly. I mean, it was a very crazy experience because I have a 13-year-old right now. I have a 26, 19, and a 13-year-old right now. My oldest didn't have a baby until she was 25. And right now, looking at my 19-year-old and 13-year-old, I'm like, I can't picture you guys having kids. Like, you're not ready. And here I am talking about that, being 14. But I don't know. I had one of those things where I just had a huge sense of responsibility when I found out. I had a cousin who called me who was really devastated when she found out. We were really close cousins. And I remember her yelling at me saying, what did you do? You ruined your life. You're never gonna, make it. This is going to be hard for you. And I took that as a sense of, you need to step up. You need to make sure that you're not what people say you're going to be. And I made it like my purpose to make sure I was a great mom. I was going to make something out of myself. And I used it to drive myself to, really go where I wanted to go. I mean, I put myself through college. And so I really didn't want to be that standard, what happens to teenage parents type story. And I knew that I owed it to myself and I owed it to my daughter to really make something happen and just really try hard to just, make a life for us.
Well, you didn't accept that status quo of what people were inflicting on you as far as how they thought your life would go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And so now life happens. You have this amazing child. You're with your husband. If you don't,
okay. We actually broke up when she was 1. So we broke up for 3 years. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So, wow.
And it was crazy because we were young. He wanted to explore life. I wanted to do something else. And so we completely split up to where we actually weren't really talking, and we would have to drop off the baby at a relative's house because we couldn't be together. We would just fight. And so it was weird because I think it was like 3 years that we were broken up. And I don't know, things were changing a little bit in both of our lives. We were growing up. And I remember just him calling me saying that, hey, can I drop off, our daughter because I want to go to church. And I'm like, oh, why don't you go to church with me? Out of nowhere, like we weren't even talking. And so we ended up going to church together, hung out for the day. And then ever since then, we actually just stayed together and just kind of try to get to know each other a little bit more. And And then we've been together ever since. And I think she was probably about 4. And it was really confusing to her. And we would hug and she would cry. I'm like, don't touch my mom.
Oh.
Like she didn't understand what was happening.
Now, I got to say, this is a love story.
Yeah. It's actually like we're very blessed to have a story to share, and we're very proud of it. Because it's not very often that you guys, meet someone at such a young age, go through a point in your life where you literally like didn't like each other, and then get back together. And now to fast forward where we are today, we have 4 kids, a grandbaby. He left his job in the construction industry to work with me in the real estate industry. And we've gone through quite a bit of a journey. And I think that every time we go through things, it makes us stronger as a family. When we had our 4th child in 2018, it out of all the 4 kids, he was the only one that was planned, by the way. But I was very healthy during the pregnancy, had him, and a few hours after I had him, I started bleeding quite a bit, and I had they called it DIC, and it's where you start clotting and they can't get the blood you to stop bleeding. And so they had to put me in the emergency room, in the operating room. And they said that I lost so much blood. I guess my hemoglobin dropped to a little below half, and they had to transfuse like 8 bags of blood through an IV in my neck, and that my lungs were failing. So by the time they got me out of the operating room, I was intubated. And so it was a very scary time for my family. I just remember waking up in the recovery room and my husband just over me watching and looking at me, trying to wait for me to open my eyes. And he's just sobbing and pulling out pictures of the family. And so it was a very rough and scary time, mostly for them, because I was in and out of consciousness. So I don't really remember, but I do remember hearing him. I don't know if he was talking to me or someone else. And he said that, watch, she's going to come out of this and she's going to, do amazing things. Like, this is going to make her stronger. And so that really sticks with me, because it's like, I could have lost my life that day. And the reason why I didn't is because I have more to give. And then about 6 months, pretty much exactly 6 months from that time, my husband went to Mexico with some friends. And, I had planned to go visit my sister in LA, and I didn't want to, but something kept pulling me to go. And so I drove with the kids and talked to my husband, made sure he was okay. And the very next morning, I get a call from him. His voice is distorted. He's like, I think I'm having a stroke. He's in Mexico. And thankfully he was with a really good friend who spoke Spanish. And it was like a terrifying experience because, I don't know how bad it was. I just know that I can tell in his voice that something was wrong. And he would call me every now and then to check in, but it took him a very long time to get from where he was at to the border into California and into San Diego, because he went to a hospital in Mexico and they told him that he was just having a headache. He partied too hard and whatever. And, I kept telling his friend, I'm like, no, he's having a stroke. He's had one before. You need to get him here. And so I remember his friend had to get into an ambulance. Then they had to go to their hotel room to find the passports. And then they had to go to the border. And then from the border, get on a U.S. ambulance, because the ambulance from Mexico couldn't cross the border. And then I got to I went from LA to San Diego, and I got there before him. And I could just hear the ambulance. And I'm like, please just let him be okay. And thankfully, he got through that with very minimal physical things. And again, another thing about like, we both could have died and we both didn't. And we're trying to figure out like, what is it that, I mean, there's got to be a reason why we both survived that. And so, and then another 6 months later, a very, very close family member, our niece, who was 23 years old, her mom and I were pregnant at the same time with our oldest. So she's very close with my oldest daughter, and she was like a daughter to us. She lived with us when when they were younger, and she actually passed away. Yeah. So all of that happening in a year and a half from 2018 to 2019 was a lot for us to go through. And I had just decided to go back into real estate in 2018. So, having to go through all of that just within months of each other was a lot of obstacles. And, people look at us on our social media and in person and think like, wow, they're lucky for the life that they live. And, I'm here to tell everybody, like, it's not luck. We all have gone through so much, but we choose the path that we take, and we put ourselves in a situation where we can live the life that we want.
Wow. And I do apologize. I'm having a
Oh,
little.
no, it's okay.
Let me just grab a quick sip of water here. Welcome to all of our on the Wisdom Audio out.
Yeah.
I do apologize. Wow. So many things happening. 6 months. Mm-hmm. And it's like your emotions are just trying to catch up with one another. Mm-hmm. And what you said about after your husband had a stroke, that you both survived and you're trying to make sense of it. I still feel that way about my son's accident. Mm-hmm. And I certainly relate to that. In fact, tomorrow will be 4 months that my son will be seizure free, and I am just waiting for midnight tonight. And I felt such emotion when you said that, like trying to make sense of why what you went through was very traumatic. What your husband went through was very traumatic, yet you both survived. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I both see you writing a book together. That just popped into my head.
That would be amazing. I've actually had that pulling on my heart lately, where I want to, we've actually started talking about our story just this year on podcasts. And we actually are in the process of we would turn on the camera and just talk about our story, and who knows what we do with it. So I've been thinking about doing a book or like even a podcast and talking about our journey. So we're in the works of trying to figure out how to make it happen.
You know what? I am so excited to hear that, because, when we think of stories relative to what we've been through, and, I always say, if the worst thing that happens to me is that I wake up and I have a bad hair day, whatever, like who cares? The small stuff doesn't really bother me anymore. In fact, somebody shared with me the other day, and I'm sure that you can relate to this. It's like no longer does maybe standing in the line at the grocery store really bother me, or being in traffic, or those things that, could set us off a little bit. And of course, I'm guilty of that to a certain degree, but we learn to appreciate and have respect for our journeys, to share it. And that is what is so amazing about your story. Like it just, and by the way, the book will be a #1 bestseller.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like, what you're talking about with like, enjoying the little things in life. I mean, we all could just die. We're not guaranteed to wake up tomorrow. And unfortunately, our niece couldn't. And so we wake up every day just really trying to be better than who we were the day before. And we work a lot on ourselves. I'm very fortunate because my husband and I share the same values. We share the same interests. And, we're trying to teach our kids and the people around us. We've created a community here close to where we are. And we're trying to instill like personal development things within our community, within our sphere. My husband's really big into like fitness and health. And so, just being able to just give people value with whoever we cross, and just really appreciating that we are able to take a breath. We're able to wake up in the morning. It just means so much more. And so we're trying to learn that even though real estate's really busy and we're constantly working, our phone's always ringing, we have to slow down. And my husband's a lot better than me with that. We definitely have to slow down and just appreciate life, because our kids are going to grow up fast. We can make a lot of money, but is that really what's going to make us happy? Or is it going to be the memories that we create with each other and with our kids and with the people in our community? We're always looking for ways to just help other people. And the reason why we've grown so much with our business is the fact that we take money out of the equation, and we're really looking to see how can we give people value. I have a networking group here that I created in my community for local businesses, and I don't really promote real estate at all. And it's mostly like, hey, what can I do to help support your business? And, putting that into, my life, and then people getting to know who I am, it just comes back to me in return, and in more than I could ever imagine. And so, taking the finances and all that stuff out of it, it just makes the process a lot better. And I always tell people to, like, you see our story, you look at what we're doing, and obviously social media makes everything look so easy. And one thing I always tell people is, like, if you want to do something, you can do it, but you have to enjoy the process, and you have to enjoy the things that people are not going to want to do. People are not going to want to sit in a computer and learn about certain things, or wake up at 4:30 in the morning and read a book and do the things that's going to make you feel better or learn. I mean, there's a lot of things. And I actually just read a book called, I can't remember what it was, but it was Pounding the Stone by Joshua Metcalf. And he talks about, like, when you're pounding the stone, it's not that last hit that's going to open the stone. It's all the pounding that comes before it. And also enjoying the mundane things that you have to do. Like, doing real estate is a very tough career. There's a lot of fallout in the industry, and there's so much that goes behind that people don't see. It's like, oh, you get to look at beautiful houses all day. No, we don't. We have to battle for our clients. We have to work with other agents that we might not like. There's a lot of paperwork and legal work that we're just, people don't see, but they see the glamour of it online, right? And so learning to enjoy the process and learning to enjoy the daily things is what is going to get you to where you want to be. And so, if there's something that you want to do, even like going to the gym, if you want to, like, lose weight, right, you have to enjoy going to the gym every day and eating the right foods. And they're not the glamorous things that people like, but that's what's going to get you to where you want to be.
So well said. And of course, on the fitness part of it, obviously I relate to that on so many different levels. I weighed at one point more than my commercial grade kickboxing bag. And my
Wow.
kickboxing bag is 272 pounds. but I share that not to be funny about it or not to poke fun at myself, but that was hard. Being heavy was hard. And you're mentioning and talking about, different mindset things. And, I knew that at one point when I was that heavy, I was not well. Some people that are heavier are completely healthy. I was not. So I had to look at this, that it was going to be a challenge, but I had to think of it in different terms.
Yeah.
So doing that in such a way, again, that honors your journey, that you can help others. And I love what you said about, connecting with your community. For me, it's about connecting, engaging, and collaboration comes from that. Because when I think back to the day of Ryan's accident, or in that moment, I was on top of the world.
Yeah.
I'm an online entrepreneur, virtual legal assistant, and I was a week away of making my first 5-figure month.
Wow.
But everything changed. And you know what? That's okay, because now I'm actually doing what I really love to do, is connecting with the stories that, of course, inspire others. Thank you for sharing that. That is amazing. Absolutely. So what do you foresee for yourself, in your husband, in your family, in the future? Like, what is on the horizon?
My husband tells me all the time that I'm like one of those big dreamers. I always have like big ideas. I just, I definitely think that we're on a journey to share something, and all the stories that we have, that we've been through. I know that especially with the pandemic, there's been a lot of people who are shuffling their journey right now, shuffling where they're going. People are finding different paths. Some people are lost. Some people just need, a little bit of guidance. And so I feel like if we took a little bit more time to share our story and really just kind of share all the things that we've learned through it. And, we're really big on personal development. I mean, I read books every day. We have a very big morning ritual that we follow. I mean, we wake up, we read, we do sauna, meditate, cold plunge, gym. I mean, it's like a very 3-hour thing. But we just want to share, with people, different things that we've learned through our journey and how you can overcome some of the battles that you have in your head. And I know that there's a lot of people who do that already. But we just feel like certain people can connect with our story and some of the struggles that we've been through. We definitely want to help a lot more people with our real estate business, but also just be there for people in our community, as far as, whether it's a local businesses that need help, or, people that we meet through socials, just like, you, or maybe someone listening on here. And, we definitely want to write the book and start our podcasts and talk about our story a little bit more. Yeah. So.
Oh, by the way, I know a really awesome podcast and booking manager who would be very happy to assist you with that. Just saying. Need to put it.
Sounds good.
Rose, do you have a couple more minutes? I just want to thank, of course, all our amazing listeners on the Wisdom Audio app. If maybe perhaps somebody has a question that they might want to ask you. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Wisdom, we have time for one guest to come up on stage. If you'd like to ask Rose a question or contribute to the conversation. Rose, as we're waiting, and hopefully, someone will come up, how can our viewers and listeners connect with you further?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. Our real estate page is Gonzales team _CA. My personal Instagram is Rose K Gonzales, Gonzales. And yeah, happy to, connect with anybody.
Wow. Your story and really touches the hearts of many. And I see it blossoming out, and just be ready because things are going to get even more crazier, but in such an amazing way. Your smile, you're bright, and everything that you have shared today really touches my heart. And I know that it touches the heart of many. And you're very welcome. You and your husband are using your voices to share your stories, but also to share and uplift your community as well. And to me, these are the stories that inspire us. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today and with our audience. And I hope you will definitely consider coming back and visiting me again.
Absolutely. Of course, anytime.
And maybe we can have your hubby.
Yeah. Yeah, we would love that.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, I want you to take this opportunity to really think about your story and maybe a story or something that's happened in your life, how you can turn it around, and always be true to your journey. And as I said, these are the stories that inspire us. And today I continue to be inspired by this amazing mom and grandma. And I'm telling you, no, she does not look like a grandma. She looks like my younger sister, who's about 20, 30 years younger than I am. But anyways, my name is Janice, the host of Stories That Inspire Us. And remember, if you have a story to share, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to help to showcase your story to inspire us, to inspire others. Thank you again, Rose. Thank you, Wisdom. And we shall see you again real soon. Bye for now.